Okay, we are now live. The clock is running. This is Michael Yan in Hong Kong again. I'll give a few seconds for people to come on board here. And yes, so I'm not sure if it's feeding out. Eric, can you see? Does it look like it's going out? I don't see anybody coming on. It says it's live. We'll see. All right.
There we go.
All right. You see it?
Yep.
All right. We are live. All right. And so, right. So here we are. This is medics. Cody on the right, American, lives in Australia. And E and P, going by their nom de guerre. And so we will turn it over to them. We see we've got about 50 people coming on now. It'll be over 100 very quickly, so we might want to wait a few more seconds. And when we get to about 100, we'll start. It's about 85 now. So we're going to start just very soon, and we will watch for questions. Hey, Caroline, I guess you're up in New Hampshire right now. Hey, Shandan, you must be in India. Jonathan Fields, all right, you're here. We're at 128. We're going to go ahead and start. We've got 134 people on. Hey, Donna. All right, here we go. So we are in Hong Kong, and we are with medics, Cody on the right with the red hair, American, and EMP, Hong Kongers, and we will turn it over to you. What did you see coming in, and we'll just let you roll.
What did you see coming in on the way here?
Well, I just passed by Mongkok, and there are a couple of people claiming themselves to be police arrest a boy. Or more accurately, they're pressing a boy on the floor. Like 10 guys to versus one guy. I'm not quite sure what happened actually. So that's what I saw when I come to the interview today. Yeah.
They were undercover?
Definitely, but we're not sure if they're police or not because they're not showing any pass or not, but they're just shouting to get people to step back, etc. You know, like a usual police stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to talk about tonight is, you guys are both first aiders, I myself am the same. We're going to talk about the general first aid situation. I've only been here a month. You guys have been here for the entire 6 months. So we'll talk about how you guys got started. Also what you've seen change over the entire 6 months, how you've seen the police interact with the protesters and interact with the first aid and the medics, and then just the cases you've seen and what the general first aid situation is, like what you guys need, what you have a hard time obtaining, what the capability of the first aid groups in Hong Kong.
Hey Gene, I saw your comment to speak louder, please, or move the mic. Can you speak a little louder? I'll move this closer to you for starters.
I'm getting over a cold, so my throat's a little hoarse.
All right. How's that, Gene?
Test. So,
hey, Corinda. All right, go ahead.
We'll start with you, E. How did you get started doing the first aid and the protests?
So my first protest was the 9th of June, but that was just as a protester. And then the 12th of June, someone put out a notice, was like, there's a big picnic going on. It's a peaceful assembly. So I brought all my stuff, had a sandwich, picnic blanket, brought a friend, brought a book, like tanning lotion. I thought it was going to be like a day out. It's going to be great. And then I sit there and I'm thinking to myself, I'm useless. I'm wearing black, but I'm useless. So I start wondering, and then I kind of stand up in the front with the guys who are now passing along umbrellas or gloves, zip ties, and I still think to myself I'm just here wasting space. So I go to a supply chain, I get some first aid supplies, and then shove them in my bag, and then stand there, feel useless again. So ultimately I went to a first aid station and joined. I asked if I could join. I said, hey, this is my experience. I am trained in first aid. This is my certification. Can I join you guys? And they said yes, so I joined them. And that day we had patients coming in with heat stroke and general cuts and bruises, sprained ankle, dizziness, and then around about 3 we get the first sort of trauma type patients, pepper spray, tear gas, and then maybe 3:15 we get 7 canisters of tear gas like just shot right into our station, and our station, you know, it's not like a proper first aid station, but there's a little like banner saying first aid, like it's just written in marker, and a little green cross that we drew on it, and yeah, they shot at us like while I was trying to stop the bleeding of like, I think a reporter got shot in the arm or something, and I was trying to stop the bleeding, and we had to evacuate, and this was in Tamar Park, so that's how I got started.
Baptism by fire. And you, Pete, how did you get started?
Well, more or less the same as you, but I started a bit late. I didn't went to the 6th, 9th protest, but I did went to the 6th, 12th one. So just like her, I went there with my friends, which I assume should be everything peaceful. And suddenly, like police shooting tear gas, etc. So I joined, because one of my friends are already in the first aid medic team, so I joined him and worked with him. And I think probably by 5, well, actually it's about 3 p.m. because we already realized that the police are starting to take out guns and having more and more manpower around the Legos building. And that's when we decide to move back a bit. And I think probably around 4 or 5, then everything escalated real quickly. And that's when we try to evacuate, and a lot of patients just come up to our stations, and that's pretty much how I started working as the first aid medic.
Okay.
Let me just point out that that day none of us had helmets, eye shields, eye masks. I wasn't even wearing a mask until I became first aid, and none of us had like gas masks, so we were breathing in a huge amount of tear gas without any protection.
That's true.
You didn't expect that to happen at all?
No,
That's
absolutely
right.
not.
Absolutely not. Because like just as what you say, it's called a picnic day, right? So
Right.
I basically just carried an empty bag with some water and a towel, because I expected it would be very hot that day, but definitely not on a scale of like helmet or a mask or eye shield or whatever I needed.
What was that date again?
12th of June.
Yeah.
12 June.
12th of June, okay. And so lots of the first aid groups, you guys sort of naturally divide into small squads, if you will, of people that get along and work well together. Are you guys still with the same teams that you started with that day? I mean, people come and go, but generally?
Yes.
They stick together
Somewhat,
pretty well?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, no for me, because
Okay.
I then joined another team afterwards, because during July I stopped it due to some personal reasons, and after I come back and trying to help in the role of a medic, I joined another team instead of my old one.
Okay. All right. So we're coming up now on half a year of protests.
Yep.
And you guys have been here since the start. It sounds like it started off pretty chaotic right there from the beginning. But have you seen any massive changes as things have gone on? Just in police tactics, in the way the police treat the first aid? Were they, because we've seen recently, especially with the universities, where first aid and medical personnel have been blocked, have been arrested, have been injured by police. Was that starting at the beginning, or is that more recent?
Well,
I think it changed around maybe August time.
Yeah.
Maybe towards September type time. At first we kind of could float anywhere. We knew to stick with the reporters and wear our high vis, have our markers on us.
Or even as long as you carry a parcel. I mean, a certificate or some sort of a pass which can prove you are a qualified medic. You can get into the police or get behind them. But I think probably it's after the incidents of 21st July, because that's when the protesters and the whole Hong Kong become more and more hatred against the police, and that's when the police are treating all the protesters and also the medic even worse.
Yeah.
As far as police tactic goes, I think there's been a lot more trying to trap the protesters. Instead of crowd control, so instead of trying to disperse, which they were doing on the 12th of June, they weren't coming behind us and surrounding us. Instead of that, like right now we're seeing a lot more like police forces going 3 or 4 directions and coming up behind us and like surrounding us so that there's no route to escape.
Yeah. Has that been very so in the month that I've been here? I remember first getting here, and it seemed almost as if the police were going out there shooting a bunch of tear gas, but they weren't trying to execute very precise crowd control. And there was a lot of violence there, and that culminated in the night of the 18th of November when there was the stampede. And after that night, it was 9 or 10 days or so of peace, during which you had the elections with sweeping victories for the pro-democracy side, and then you also had the United States pass the Hong Kong Human Rights Bill. And it wasn't until those 9 or 10 days of peace finished, that weekend, this would have been last Saturday, the weekend of last Saturday, the police were out and amazingly more restrained, it seemed, and doing proper crowd control techniques. They very quickly broke the crowds up, pushed in from various sides, split them apart so that they couldn't really work together, the protesters, and they went away. And then, and this is all just over the last week, then at the Human Rights March with the 800,000 people, I heard that they were trying to trap people. And they were searching people going to the march, they were searching people coming from the march, and they blocked all the possible exits. So I think everyone in the march was scared to really attempt any real protest because they couldn't get away. That's just been in the month that I've been here. But you've seen that over the entire 6 months as well.
So at the beginning of the protest, we would rely quite heavily on the MTR actually, because it's one of the main bases of Hong Kong transport to us, and that kind of changed when the police started going into the stations and it was not safe to take public transportation anymore. There's like that kind of change. Like before we would go out with our gear like just kind of out in the open, I guess, and they started checking people that looked suspicious. So in the beginning I was still wearing like a black shirt, but now I don't. I just wear whatever under my vest. I'm not sure about Percy.
Yeah, pretty much the same, because especially when we were carrying the gears like the helmet, trying to get to the point where the protest happens. If we wear a black shirt, it's very likely for us to be stopped and searched by police. And even though like legally, even they arrest you, you won't get charged successfully, but they still arrest you and bother you a lot too. That's why even for me, I don't wear a black shirt out, especially when I know that I'm trying to do something that the police think that it's not right, but which is legally fine for us to do.
Right.
Don't know whether the charges are successful because they're currently ongoing. We have friends who've had their licenses, so who are doctors or nurses who've had their licenses threatened because they've been arrested on scene.
Wow, just because they went to help, they threatened their license.
Yeah, there's a full doctor that was leaving Poly University, an actual doctor who was there to do nothing but provide medical aid, was arrested. And can you talk about his possible license? They've threatened his license.
So I think, I'm not sure about the details, but he got a call from the hospital authority, just saying like, your license, like, it's under kind of threat.
It's on the line.
So like, it's according to the system in Hong Kong, like the doctor system or the medicine system. So basically, even you got, unless you are charged successfully or with a criminal record, you still can register as a doctor, but you have to go through several interrogations and listening by the medical council. But because a lot of the person who is inside the medical council are actually pro the government and pro Beijing, so it's actually not a fair council, and it's very biased towards people who engage in the movement. So that's why a lot of doctors or nurses who even willing to help the protest, they have to do it secretly or not spotted by the hospital. Otherwise, I mean, they won't get their they might get their license suspended, which is not that high risk, but they can be easily fired by the hospital and fired by the hospital authority because of under the government order. Especially because I think back in last month, they assigned a new director of the hospital authority, which is not a doctor but a businessman who is very pro-Beijing. So it's actually, I would say it's white terror, making people not willing to help because they are scared they might got fired by the hospital, etc. So it's actually kind of difficult for even medics to help in the protest, because they are not only trying to suppress us with the police, but by all means they can do.
There's also the problem of protesters not wanting to go to hospital,
Yeah.
so we don't actually have backup. So for example, like in June, July, like even August, like if something happened on the scene of a protest, if something really big happened, so if they were bleeding like very profoundly, or if they lost consciousness, we would still be able to call the ambulance with confidence that they would be kept safe, or they would have the treatment that they needed, or the police wouldn't interfere. But around maybe like August, September time, that kind of started to change. Like protesters were being arrested at hospitals, and police were actually like stopping ambulances. I think it's like in October.
And also I think because the hospital authority also allows the police to get access into the system, the computer system of the hospital authority, so they can freely check the records of the patients, knowing that where they come from, what are their injury types, and to check out whether they are suspected to be participated in the protest, and arrest people who are seemingly to be protesters.
So also because they've used the tactic now where they've stationed riot police at actual hospital A&Es. So in the waiting room you'll see like 10 odd riot police. So because you have to register where the ambulance came from in the first place, that puts a lot of protesters at risk. So if they know, like let's say like Wednesday night there was a protest in Bangkok and the ambulance came from that area, it raises like immediate like red flags for the police that this person could be from the injury could be sustained from protest related activities.
Well, it is actually quite interesting because due to my background, I go to the hospital a lot for work, and back in the days, like before the movement, usually there are only 1 to 2 cops, not riot police, but with no gear at all. Sometimes there are even no police in the public hospital because, I don't know, maybe they're just chilling around, I don't know what they're doing. But suddenly, especially on the days of the protests, now there will be like 10 to 20 riot police with guns walking around in the hospital, which I don't think it's suitable for police to do so, because you have to know that in Hong Kong public hospital it's very, very crowded and a lot of different patients, and how come you police just walk around with guns in a place which supposedly to be, with a lot of people scared, waiting for treatment, etc. Then it's not quite sensible for me to have this sort of environment in a hospital.
Yeah, and I think, well, people in Hong Kong know about it, but what a question I get a lot from people in the States is, like, sure, there's lots of protests going on, but how does the general populace, of Hong Kong feel about it? Do they support it? It's less of a question now after the elections, which made it very clear that most of Hong Kong supports this. But the sort of underground support that goes on, people now are scared to go to the hospitals, but like you were talking about earlier, there's these secret clinics around where people can go, and doctors do give their time. Of course, they take a lot of risk doing that because they could lose their job, and now we've seen they could be arrested. The first aiders go there.
So one of our tactics that have changed is that we no longer carry everything with us. We actually try and plan safe houses in advance in areas that we know that are likely to have a protest or conflict is going to happen. So places like Yamate or Bangkok, Chim Sa Choi, like even like Wan Chai, we now try and have a safe house, like plan in advance. Like we can bring our stuff there, like dressing kits, or if we have a doctor on site, then we bring like sutures, and it plays a big part in our decision making. And so cases that we would normally send like immediately to hospital, like even without like a threat to life. Now we're kind of double taking on it, whether we are actually going to send them to hospital or whether they can wait. If it's not life-threatening, then we can try and transport them to one of the underground clinics and get them help there, so as to not risk their, personal safety. That's just one of the things that has evolved quite naturally, actually, through the process of the 6 months.
Yeah, I think just to give the people in America sort of an idea, when I first came here a month ago, very naive as far as the actual protests were going. And when you first go out on the streets and there's tear gas and everyone's running around, it can seem somewhat chaotic. But once you start to see the massive support system that has evolved, and the fact that it's entirely leaderless, really, and not just in medical fields, but also just for supplies, for people that need to hide, people open up their homes and their shops to make sure that people stay safe. But in the first aid realm, it's amazing, especially given, once again, that there is no one person leading this. The professionalism and organization that has come about. I've seen the safe houses. There's cots and stretchers laid out. There's doctors that they can call that will come when things get really serious. There's places for people that can't go home anymore to stay. People come through there just to cook dinner for everyone that's staying there, for patients that are staying there, or for refugees, if you will, that are staying there. People come through to cook dinner. People come through to drop off supplies. Massive amounts of donated supplies. I mean, more than you could ever possibly need. So the support, which obviously was pretty obvious from the election, but the support is there, and it's everyone. It's medical professionals and doctors, but also people that come through and like, yeah, I'm not a first aider, but can I cook you guys dinner? Just random citizens that will come in, cook dinner, help clean, and things like that. So it's very impressive to see. What's the worst night that you guys have seen so far? Worst protest day, as far as casualties are concerned?
Well, it has to be either the night at Polytechnic University or either at the Chinese University of Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's probably, I'll take Polytechnic University more than the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Because if I have to exaggerate a bit, it's sort of like a massacre instead of like a normal protest. Because unlike Chinese University of Hong Kong, they're like the main battlefield is only on the second bridge, like the number 2 bridge. I don't know how to say it in English, but like the Polytechnic University, it's a lot of different battlefields at the same night, with a lot of patients coming in from due to pepper spray,
water cannons.
Water cannons, even sonic cannons.
Yes.
Rubber bullets, beanbag
Did they use the sonic cannons?
Yeah, they did use it.
The LRAD.
The LRAD, yeah.
I think
did you feel the effects of the sonic LRAD cannon?
One of the first aid medic from our team that experienced it, it said that it's like the range of attack is about like 15 meters, something like that, but as long as you step out of the range, it's nothing. But when you step in, you feel like your eardrum is vibrating, you're a bit dizzy, etc.
We got it pretty well, me and my partner that were out there, and I assume they can adjust the level, and I would guess they did not have that at full power, but it was not pleasant at all. Yeah.
Did it make you feel nauseous?
No, not quite to that point, just an extremely unpleasant noise where you felt if they turned that up just a little bit, you'd be moving.
Yeah.
No.
So that's the 17th, Sunday the 17th of November. So we're at PolyU. There's various like first aid station, medic stations. There are doctors who are on site. There are doctors who are on call. There are nurses there. Doctors from like different disciplines. So there's like a radiologist. There's a plastic surgeon. There's ortho. There's A&E. Basically, like all walks of life are there, and the supplies are good. We have, ice packs from the canteen, so we've like submerged it in ice. We have everything from like a simple plaster to like local anesthetic and sutures, and
It's the thing, when I say a field hospital, it's genuinely a field hospital.
Yeah.
it's like judo mats on the floor in a classroom in one of the buildings in Poly University.
But hospital is it's a good term
Yeah.
for it because of,
Yeah.
even though supplies are rudimentary compared to a full hospital, the expertise you have on hand
Yeah.
and the supplies you do have, you can really give someone some pretty good care there.
Yeah, we had like adrenaline just kicking around.
And also, I think the organization there, because we got a couple of doctors who's very experienced, and even an army medic also there.
Yes.
So it helped a lot, and I'll say they run like a hospital, like a field hospital, and also it's really busy that day. I think we worked for more than 12 hours.
Yeah.
Continuously.
Yeah, so we got woken up around 8, said something was starting. The real fight started at 10. I think we evacuated at 8.
Yes, yeah. It was about 8 o'clock when we evacuated.
Yeah.
That was the cutoff the police gave us, I believe.
Yeah, but it's kind of been...
That was on the 17th of
Yeah.
November.
Yeah.
Sunday.
That was right before the Stampede night.
And then the Stampede night was chaotic and massive amounts of patients coming in a very short amount of time because of Stampede. Like even before then, we had a patient. We work on the same team.
Yeah.
We had a patient who got hit by a tear gas canister in the head, and then we had people coming out of Poly U. The dudes who abseiled down with empty hands on a rope.
Abseil, she means repel.
Abseil.
Yeah, repel.
You're saying it
the
the British
American
way.
term.
Oh, right.
Americans don't know what that is.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
So they
simplified English.
climbed. They climbed a rope down, and like one dude, we suspect he has like ligamentous damage from like spraining an ankle, rope burns on the hands, and Molotovs, and then we moved safe houses. So we had a doctor that day, but we had to call in for more help because there were so many patients who had long lacerations or like blunt force trauma, and we ended up having 3, 4, 5 doctors on site that day helping us, like different doctors. Some we didn't know, we just kind of bumped into them. Some we did actually call in ourselves, and we actually arranged for patients to go to a clinic the next day just because it was very serious that it needed to be seen in a hospital, but not serious enough that it needed to be seen right away. We had a spinal injury patient that day, so the 18th, the night of the Stampede in Yaomate, and so she got hit by pepper spray pretty badly. I'd say like maybe half of her torso.
She also claiming that she got hit. I think it's true because she got a pretty serious spinal injury. She got hit by a couple of bullies with the baton, and also probably rubber bullet, etc. in the back. And
so around like the shoulder blade area, the neck, thoracic region.
Yep.
Pretty bruised up, painful to touch, and she was like breathing quite heavily, nauseous, dizzy, weak.
She got like the reason why we suspect that she had a spinal injury is because like she has like barely any sensation on half part of her body. Like,
Yeah, so her right hand didn't have any, like pretty much like zero pain response.
Yep.
And we tested for nerve reflexes on the left hand, and that was hyperreflex. And that raises a lot of red flags for us. But she was arguing, so she and another medic were arguing, we don't want to go to hospital because we had a list of hospital A&Es that were that had police stationed there. So we had a list, including the one that was closest to us. And because if you call the ambulance, you can't actually choose which hospital you go to. Like, they'll go to the closest one or the next available one. And we had news that it wasn't safe for the protester. So it was a really difficult decision for the protester to actually make, for the patient who was very, very reluctant to go to hospital. But we spent about an hour convincing her. that it was going to be
What was
okay.
how was she wounded again? Can you please say that again?
So she was hit by pepper spray, definitely.
And
Also, like, I
baton.
think she said, like, the raptors hit her a couple of times with batons in her back.
And also rubber bullets.
And also
Can
a
you
rubber
please
bullet.
explain what raptors are?
Raptors are a specialized, like, task force
I think it's
subunit of the police.
It's a group of police who is specialized in catching people with a more, I would say, higher force. They can use weapons with higher forces. They carry guns, unlike normal riot police. So they are specialized in carrying like difficult tasks for the police, and they're usually more aggressive and violent.
Actually, all of the police right now carry live firearm.
Yep.
But the Raptors are supposed to have a higher level of training.
Yep.
And they're supposedly a specialized task force.
Sort of.
They're
like
childish. I've heard them out there mocking and just
Yeah.
using actually child voices, like bah, 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 like actually mocking like.
They
They're
dress
mean.
in like all black,
Yeah.
and they kind of have
dark blue, I think.
Very, very dark blue. Yeah.
yeah, very very dark blue, and they have like a face cage that they wear.
Yeah, my first trip here, one of them punched me in the back of the head and gave me a concussion, almost
Yeah.
because it's trying to move people out of the way of being pepper sprayed. Because they were
Yeah.
coming in at all through. It was on the sidewalk. They were coming in on each side and then back, and they were pepper
Yeah.
spraying citizens. And I was trying to move people, and they punched me in the head.
Yeah, and for
Even-
context, that's Maddie, who is a human rights observer and was wearing a fluorescent yellow vest. That
I
got punched in the back of the
vest,
head.
helmet.
Did you go to the hospital or?
Not here. When I got back to the States, I did, and I was told I could not drive for a couple of weeks, and I could not read.
When was that?
I was here November. I can't remember the exact day. I left.
You left right before PolyU, right?
Yeah, that Monday
so
before.
Probably around the 14th or
Yeah.
15th.
Yeah, 14th or 15th.
So you left and came right back then.
Yeah, I left, went home, realized I don't like being here, but I needed to be here, so I'm back. But yeah, I got a really severe concussion. I was basically like, had to have some friends drive me to and from work or anywhere I needed to go.
Are you okay now?
Memories here and there, but I'm fine. It'll come back,
So you-
hopefully. But
Yeah.
yeah, almost got knocked out. It was a blurry night. So.
Were you wearing a helmet?
Yeah, they got right below the helmet where basically my head meets my neck.
The nape of the neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a pretty good one. So I was pepper sprayed and tear gas that
Wow.
night too. So
It's kind of lucky that you only got a concussion because it's actually
It's
the
very
vertebrae,
serious. Yeah, it's like the
Yeah.
C2-3 region,
which can get you.
paraplegic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
A lot of the conversation the last few minutes, you guys, especially talking about the spinal injury,
Yeah.
has made it really clear that you guys have a level of professionalism that's higher than myself and higher than a lot of the first aid corps, if I'll call them that. So a lot of them have very basic first aid training,
Mhm.
but would you say that on the whole, especially as the violence escalates, that a lot of the training is not quite up to the level we need for the situations?
So most of the first aiders have 30-hour St. John or Red Cross or Hospital Authority issued certifications for first aid. So that's very basic first aid. It teaches you to deal with things like simple fractures, cuts, maybe bruises, like bee stings. But what we're really struggling right now with is the level of trauma and sort of like the seriousness of the cases. So like the severity of some of the trauma cases we're dealing with is like something that we didn't prepare for. We've never prepared for it. We never thought that we would see it. And, people getting bashed in the head with batons like a couple of times. People,
Even got real gunshots.
yeah, real gunshot wounds. So pneumothorax. People who have fallen off buildings
Yeah.
or serious Molotov burns, like half of their body or even more.
Another thing I want to point out is when it comes to being as a first aid medic, I think one of the very important thing is to carry out like a triage, like a primary triage to understand whether
You're saying triage.
yeah
Yeah.
triage to understand whether the patient is severe or not, like whether the case needed to be sent to the hospital. Because just like the case we mentioned about the spinal injury, it is actually very severe, which from my point of view and from my knowledge, you definitely need to be sent to the hospital. Otherwise, she had probably got paralyzed or even got worsened. So it's quite difficult for like people with a 30-hour basic first aid training to have. Even for me, I don't have the enough experience, because it takes a lot of practice and time for you to master how to understand how severe the case is, what exactly we need to do when we see the patients.
And there's also the problem of, so like let's say on the night of the 18th of November, so when the stampede happened, we had a massive influx of patients that we needed to categorize what we were going to treat first, where we were going to treat them, but because none of us actually had any experience with it, it was kind of a mess. And people were being seen to, were kind of like green or yellow cases, so like non-threatening.
Can you explain green and yellow?
So basically, in a understanding of first aid, there's a triage with 4 colors: yellow, green, red, and black. So black obviously meaning dead or fatal, and then red is serious, so which we have to pay immediate actions to the case, or we have to pay a lot of attention because it's life-threatening.
Even if there's like tear gas or bullets like flying across us, we either get them out of the situation ASAP, or we actually do CPR on the spot, or do whatever we need to stabilize the patient on the spot.
That would be a case probably requiring CPR, a tourniquet. If you don't treat them there, they're going to
Not
die.
even a tourniquet, like CPR.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we don't do it there, they would definitely die.
Yeah.
And yellow is
like sort of moderately severe.
So like we still have to pay attention, but yeah, you can do it later. And
if you have a broken bone, you're not going to die from it. If you have a broken bone in your thorax region and it's sticking out of your lungs, you're probably going to die from it.
Yep.
So that's how we categorize our patients. But because a lot of the cases we've dealt with are quite minimal, so like, you know, some people have had pepper spray in their face or tear gas in their eyes, they've fallen and gotten a scrape on their knee, things like that, like people will get really worked up over. I guess like as city kids, like growing up in Hong Kong, you don't really get that many injuries, so people can get really nervous, and like the first aiders especially get really nervous, like especially like the chaos around you makes it can cloud your judgment. It can make something small seem really big, or it can make something big seem really small. And it's knowing when to call for help or when to actually get them to hospital when it can't wait.
I think everyone's getting better at that because it's been 6 months, but still, even if you have more than the basic 30-hour training, no one has experience. It requires years of experience. You could have all the training in the world. You could have a year's worth of training, but if you've never actually done it while under fire, the first time that happens, and I just have the same basic training, but I remember November 2nd was the first day I went out, and tear gas starts flying over. You get pretty nervous at first. And most of the guys and gals doing first aid here are, there's some 16-year-olds out there doing first aid, but average age is probably 18 to 25 or so. The frontline protesters are usually younger. The first aiders seem to be a little bit older and more mature a lot of the time, on average, I'd say. But none of them have this sort of experience. And like you say, growing up in Hong Kong, it's, I don't want to say a sheltered childhood, but, you know, we have had people coming up yelling, first aid, and we run, and you get to a guy and he's stubbed his toe and got a little piece of glass in it, and you just ran half a mile. And it's a bit of a, you know, they don't quite understand what's severe and what's not, which is
one of the situations we're facing right now is that there are people who want to help as first aid, but they're not quite certified. So they haven't even completed their 30-hour training. Like, they might be in the process of it, but they don't actually have the certification to prove that they're qualified in first aid. And we'll have a number of those guys like running around with, like, they'll know when to call for help, but they're running around like washing people's eyes, and that kind of causes problems.
Because as long as if one of the medics who got arrested have no license, then
it raises suspicion for all of us.
There have been allegations from both police and from several and from pro-Beijing newspaper outlets that some protesters are pretending to be first aid or volunteer EMTs. Have you guys personally seen such a situation happen?
Well,
I haven't seen a protester like change into EMT gear to try to sneak by the cops or anything. There's certainly some first aid that don't have the training, but I haven't seen it in a situation where they're trying to use it as a disguise. That's just their way they want to help, and they just happen to not have that certification yet.
Well,
Which, I mean, if all you did is run around and wash people's eyes out, that doesn't require 30-hour training to do that. But if you're presented with a case and you try to do something outside of your education and your training and experience, you could hurt someone more. And also, if you're running around with a red cross on you and all you know how to do is rinse someone's eyes out, there's a pretty good chance that someone's going to come up to you going, hey, I'm hurt, and they're going to have a serious injury. And you're going to be saying, whoa, sorry, all I know how to do is wash your eyes out. And I mean, my training's very basic. Like, I'll wash people's eyes out, that's no problem, very basic things.
Can you explain why people need their eyes washed out?
Tear gas. Tear gas.
It's
Tear gas, pepper
irritant.
spray,
Yeah.
So everything gets in the eyes, so you just wash it out with saline. I mean, it's as basic as could be. Yeah, it does hurt.
It hurts, irritates. You don't want to swallow it because it'll mess up your bowel movements as well.
Yep.
You don't want to breathe in too much of it because it'll mess up your lungs.
Gets on your skin, irritates the skin.
Burns the skin if depending on where it's manufactured.
yeah.
One of the other problems is that the first aids. So I was searched by the police for like an hour. Like they were just searching through my bag, searching through like my clothes, my like what was on my body, all my certifications. I had my certification with me, so that was okay. They let me go. But when I asked them why they were searching me, this was maybe like August sometime, September sometime. I don't really remember. I asked them, why are you searching me as a medic? And they said, oh, we're just trying to prevent people from having things that they shouldn't have or pretending to be someone that they're not. And so they were looking through my bag apparently for, bricks or Molotovs or like knives, like razor blades, but I had none of that on me. And what we've heard is that there have been medics out there who have been arrested
Because they have more than one pair of
because
scissors.
so they had more than one pair of scissors, or they had 2 asthma medications on them, and then there have been like
Laser pointer?
laser pointers, torches that were too bright to be first aid use.
Torches being flashlights for Americans.
During my arrest, I was arrested at Toon Moon on September 21st. I was into my cell was actually a volunteer EMT who was arrested for not because of something in his gear, but in his backpack he had, let's say, a male stamina enhancing cream. And because it had no label on,
Right.
they took their sweet time to try and figure out what was the contents inside that bottle, and they arrested him over that.
Jeez.
So there was a lot of spurious and trumped up charges that probably should have that would have never stuck if they took them to court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have heard that in addition to medical shears being considered a weapon, which are rather blunt, you'd have to work very hard to kill somebody with those, but also saline, if it doesn't say not for injection very clearly on the label, if you have injection grade saline, you could get in trouble for that. Though I haven't seen that happen.
I mean, even I have heard that there are some medics that arrest because they are bringing a bottle of liquid, which is actually saline, but the police think that it's a material for making Molotov.
Like
You just take it out and take a sip of it in front of them.
Yeah, but it's just normal saline, but without any labels. So that's why the police arrest them, because they think they're trying to do something.
Honestly, they don't really need a reason to
Yeah.
arrest you right now.
Yeah.
They can arrest you, go through your bag, think of the dumbest reason, and then go, okay, they're good enough. We've taken them in.
Yeah.
It's fear tactics to basically, threaten one's license, basically one's livelihood, and then also threaten with arrest time. Basically just detain you so that you're inconvenienced for at least 48 hours.
Yeah, even if the charges don't stick, nobody wants to be in jail overnight.
Well, I was there for 45 hours. I was bored out of my mind.
Yeah.
It's all these are all very much like standard fear tactics that have no basis in actual law enforcement.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when we got myself and one of the other American medics who's gone home now, we got stopped and searched this past Saturday, maybe it was Sunday, and as we were with a local Cantonese medic, and I think, as the white American guys, they were very restrained, but it was originally just 2 regular riot police, and then a Raptor came up, and he was getting, not in my face, I had my passport on me, I had my first aid certificate with me, it's American Red Cross, so it's pretty well recognized. They were done with me rather quickly, but my friend had forgotten his passport, and they didn't want to recognize his certificate. And so they searched his bag, and then the Raptor came up and, said, "Don't be stupid, what kind of visa are you on? Oh, a tourist visa? What kind of tourist does this stuff?" And he was told to leave and to not do first aid again. So, and of course he, got his passport and got a good certificate and went out and did that. But yeah, they don't want us to be out there doing that.
They don't want to hear reason because because for them, volunteering your time to perform first aid on people that you don't know is absolutely inconceivable to them.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had to ask because the Raptor, he then came over to me and he said, quit being stupid, quit doing this, go home, just be a tourist. I said, so is it illegal for me to do this?
In English? Did he say?
His English was quite good. His English
really?
was quite good, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But he said, quit being stupid. I said, is it illegal for me to do this? And he got kind of pissed off and he thought about it. He says, well, it's not legal. I said, but it is illegal. And he just walked off on me. And
That's a total communist thing to say, by the way. All the communist countries I've been to, if it's not specifically legal, it is specifically illegal.
Exactly, which is exactly the opposite of how it should be.
That's why we have to
I had to ask
destroy
before
them all.
they searched my friend's bag and told him to get the hell out immediately, not to wait around. But then I talked with one of the riot cops whose English was all right. And I said, I need to know. Is it legal for me? With my passport and with my certificate, is it legal for me? Because I will be out again tomorrow night if it is. And he said, yes, it's legal. Just make sure you carry your certificate.
I mean, as someone who works in human rights, I don't actually have any press credentials or first aid credentials or anything. So, I pretend I don't know Cantonese, so the second that someone starts speaking English to me and they say that they'll arrest me...
Well, you actually don't know Cantonese. Half the time that somebody's yelling at you, have to tell you they're yelling at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there was one point when a cop looked at me and said, "I will arrest you if you stay one more second. Do you understand?" And that's when I chose to leave.
That's when you go, no hablo inglés.
No hablo inglés. When they know English is when I've noticed that it's easier for especially American or European people, European journalists or whoever who don't know the language to leave is when people
absolutely.
start saying,
Well, and it's just caused them a lot more trouble in the press, I think, arresting. Not that it hasn't happened, but if you're going to start arresting journalists and you're going to start arresting volunteer medics from America especially, it's just not a great idea. Yeah. It just looks really bad in the
You
press.
get a lot of leniency.
And I don't think the individual cop on the street is necessarily that aware of that. Yeah, exactly. But enough are. I mean, to be fair,
the
way
commanders are certainly aware.
Yeah, the commanders are
They
aware.
realize that's international front page news material.
Yeah, I mean,
which is what we want. We want American medics to be arrested, so it'll get all over the news.
I know. We've thought about that. We're like, well, if we get arrested, at least it's good for the cause. But,
I've said that exactly.
Yeah, but the way I've seen them treat local medics, and certainly just locals, they're stopping and searching, and the way we were treated that night, we definitely got the silk glove treatment.
Yeah, I've seen journalists next to me who are Hong Kong based get their masks pulled off and pepper sprayed at. Like, they get their mask and then pepper sprayed, where they would not do the same to me.
Yeah.
They're very, the treatment's very different.
Yes.
Because they can't speak your language.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah,
There's usually one, it seems, in the group that has a basic grasp of English. It's a bit hard to understand. But, because sometimes you'll be standing there, a group of us Americans, and they're yelling and are they yelling at us? We don't know. And then one will shout in really bad English, "Hey, move!
Get back on pavement."
Oh, they're talking to us. Yeah, so
They don't know
get
the
out of
word
way.
pavement.
See, I get very close to where
There's
the
a lot
cops
of
are.
syllables in that word.
Yeah, I get very
We're
close
going to
to
answer
where
some of these
the-
questions, by the way, later. I see
Oh,
people
okay.
asking questions that
Okay.
we haven't answered, but we
Well,
will
that's,
as time comes. So.
one more thing I want to ask you guys is like supplies. Is it easy for the first aiders in the field hospitals to get supplies? I said earlier that there were tons of supplies in the field hospitals, but those are very basic supplies, things that you can buy at a pharmacy, things that people can go buy and then donate to the field hospitals. So as far as the more important medical supplies, like you mentioned adrenaline earlier, or even things like I've heard steri strips are hard to get, and that's a pretty basic item. Are there things that you guys have a hard time getting?
Well, basically, any supplies that can't be bought in a pharmacy is already very hard for us to get, and especially when it come up to equipments, for example, like ultrasound or even like sterile strip, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
They are usually very expensive, and a lot of them are actually illegal to be used out of a hospital.
Steri strips?
Not sterile strips.
So
Oh.
any kind of medication we're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
supposed to have our hands on.
Yeah.
Like non-over-the-counter medication.
Right.
Yeah.
Or maybe, for example, it's even for normal saline, if it's indicated for injection use, then it's illegal for people other than doctors or nurses to use it. Because it's sort of like a restricted medications in Hong Kong.
Also, we can't, as first aiders, we can't give people medication. So even
Yeah.
if they're in pain, we can't give them a paracetamol or an ibuprofen. We can't do that. In terms of supplies, like anything that needs to be imported, or we don't really have like a really good stock of anyway. So things like SAM splints or like first aid vests are we're kind of struggling right now.
Okay.
Because we can't import them.
Because we can't import them. A lot of it comes through China, and a lot of the Chinese.
When you say first aid vest, you mean the high visibility vest with the word first aid on them?
Like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
proper
Yeah.
EMS vest with the pockets and everything.
Not just that, just like any first aid, like identification things,
Or even helmets.
or even helmets,
Gas masks?
gas masks,
Yes.
things like splints. We'll have a hard time getting our hands on. We don't really use them that much, but when it needs to be used,
Yeah.
it's very, very essential to have.
I think that's one of the things, especially with the system that's evolved now, where there's multiple safe houses that you have spaced out. You know, in a month, maybe in the entire protest, only 5 splints are going to be used, but they're going to be used in 5 different areas, and so you need to, but it could be all in one area. So you have to have lots of these supplies spaced and staged throughout the city, more than you would ever actually need. But if you don't have that, and the event happens, the person isn't going to get the treatment they need. So maybe afterwards off camera we can come up with a list of things and maybe try to get some stuff in.
Yeah, sure.
So back to like this the seriousness of the injuries, especially by the protesters who have over the course of the protest. Have you seen more and more serious injuries as the protests have moved on?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like at the beginning, like in June, it's just like rinsing your eyes or like washing your skins because of pepper spray.
Or like people have tripped or like accidentally cut themselves.
Heat stroke, etc.
Yeah, heat
Yeah.
stroke. There was a lot of heat stroke during summer.
When you say heat stroke, that's a very specific condition. You mean heat exhaustion or heat stroke?
There have been both. There have
Yeah.
been heat exhaustions and there have been heat strokes. Like we've had to send people to hospitals because of heat stroke because it was so hot and the protests were going on like midday in the blistering sun, and
I think back in July, there
June,
are
July, August.
a couple
Yeah, I
of
was here.
like demonstrations in Mongkok and a basketball court, and people are sitting there, and the degree is about like 30.
Yeah,
35, 32.
so we started at noon, and within an hour we had within like maybe half an hour we had 3 patients come in with similar symptoms, and we've had to basically carry them out in a stretcher.
Okay.
But that was very early August. That was August the 5th. And since then we've seen like more injuries, more bullet wounds, more like severe
You mean
trauma.
rubber bullets?
Rubber
I realize
bullets,
there
tear
have been-
gas canisters,
Americans immediately go to actual live rounds.
Oh no, not live
Yeah.
rounds.
What is bulldog diet?
Beanbag rounds.
Yeah,
So
beanbag
they're
rounds.
metal pellets with a little.
Birdshot for people that know about shotguns.
Inside a Kevlar bag.
Yeah.
Number
Yeah,
8.
inside
I think
small
it's,
bag. It's not
for people that
beans.
know
And,
shotguns. It's I think it's number 8. I've seen them.
And sponge rounds. Those are like the most common ones. And then now we've seen an increase of use in pepper bullets. So they're kind of like little irritant substances stuffed inside a little paintball.
Yeah, like a paintball.
And they've been used quite regularly.
It's like a paintball, but it's a much harder shell than a normal
Yeah.
paintball. They really splinter out when they hit, rather than just pop like a paintball. And
Right.
so when they hit, they can
Yeah,
not only the impact, but if they break, and then they can cut you. when they
And
go.
also they spray out a lot like irritants on your
Yes.
skin, and it actually smells nice.
Yeah, if you're near where sometimes they'll shoot the wall next to you with a pepper ball, and when it bursts, the powder gets in the air. If you're not
Yeah.
wearing your mask.
Yeah.
And
your
also
face.
the use of water cannons since the end of August. So we've seen a lot of people that we call avatars. We just call, hey avatar, come here. And because they're blue, right? Because they're dyed blue. We think it's because like acrylic paint is mixed in. But so if it's just water, it's fine. You get wet, you get cold, whatever. But they mix in like I don't know, some kind of irritant like pepper spray, like a really concentrated like mixture of it. Like I've personally been hit with it. I was running from it, and then we hid into a stairwell. They stopped, looked at us, aimed at us like up the stairwell, and then just sprayed us like they were trying to give us a shower. Like
And you were all first aid.
and we were all
No protest.
They fired inside of a stairwell with the water cannon?
Yeah, so it was in Yamate.
Wow,
and-
that could be lethal.
Yeah. So a bunch of us got knocked over, like slipped, and then it started being, we were drenched from head to toe, and then it started burning, and then we got into a safe house, washed off, but then it took like an hour. Like one of my friends was hit. She had to wash off for like an hour. Like her entire body was red. I had to wash her, like in the shower. And then the after effects sucked for me. I was twitching, my muscles started spazzing, my entire body started spazzing. Like I just couldn't move. There was this hour I was laying in bed, I thought I was gonna die. It was just my entire
Was
body.
it that painful, or you thought you were going to die because of the way your body was?
Yeah, my
making
body,
spasm?
like it's like when your foot moves in a weird way, or like in the winter you move your leg and then your calf starts to cramp. It's that feeling, but your entire body. And I was running fever, I was running cold sweats, hot sweats. I couldn't regulate my temperature. I felt really dizzy, felt really nauseous, lost my appetite, and like my joints started really like not swelling up, but they were really heating up. So like a form of arthritis, I guess. Like my immune system just did not like it.
So it's basically all this due to the chemical exposure that they've laced into the water cannon truck.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we go through those symptoms one more time? Now, like your spasms, how long did they last, and which muscles particularly? And
Right. So immediately after, the effects are you're burning, you're in pain, you feel really hot, like just anything touches your skin. It's kind of like a sunburn, I guess. And then that night was fine. I was running really hot. It was still painful after, 5 hours. By the time, so I'd showered twice, with soap. We'd washed it immediately with soap and with saline. So immediately we washed with water, soap water, and saline. And then I went to the safe house to get a shower, and then I went home to get another shower, but it was still burning. And then the next day, it's maybe like 12 hours after exposure, it felt like my muscles were going to go into spasm. Like, the weird leg cramp you get when you sleep? Kind of that feeling, like it's kind of going to happen. And then roughly 24 hours later, it started happening. I think it was like the inside of my thigh started first. I was getting up from a seat. We were having dinner. I was getting up from a seat, and I was just in so much pain, and like just walking was so difficult. I started like running really hot, feeling really cold. having cold sweats, and then I got home that day, took my shower, went to bed, but then I guess just before I went to sleep, my entire body started seizing up that way, and just couldn't move because all my muscles were contracting. Kind of you can't relax.
I also did see, I did help 2 patients.
Wait,
I helped
I
2
wanna,
patients.
did it get into your eyes? I want to ask that
Eyes?
before I forget.
Did you?
Into
No.
your eyes? Did it get into your eyes?
No,
And
no.
how long until the symptoms were completely cleared?
From the water cannon?
Yeah.
Week.
Yeah, 1 week.
A week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got it head to toe,
Yeah.
and you felt symptoms for a week.
Yeah, I was drenched. We had to take off all our clothes, throw them away, basically. I'd say 7 to 9 days for me. But, so I think it's
Should
weird,
you,
right?
Should you go to work on the first day?
No,
24
I actually
hours later?
missed. I actually missed 1 day of work. So I got hit on a Sunday, started seizing on Monday, couldn't go to work on Tuesday, went to work on Wednesday. And then so it's weird, right? Because half my team had a really strong immediate response, so really burning, really in pain, really intense, just hot pain. And then those people were kind of fine the next day or the days after, but then the people who didn't really feel it immediately had more after effects. So things like nausea or dizziness were weird bowel movements, so people had really irritated stomachs, coughing until you basically throw up. You get cold symptoms almost, runny nose.
Fever and chills.
Fever and chills, that was a big thing. We were running really hot and then really cold and really hot again. Cold sweats, hot sweats.
What did you have with the 2 patients you were with?
Well, I think it's the other extreme that you mentioned.
Yeah.
They just freeze, they cannot move, having muscle spasm, have to be moved away by 4 guys because they just basically lie down and twitching around, cannot move. So I guess it's the opposite of a...
I saw one person call you.
Can you restate that? I want to. So.
It's the opposite of E. So they basically have a very, very serious spasm that they can't
Spasm,
move.
right?
Yeah, spasm, muscle spasm. They just stay there, cannot move, can't even shout up for help. They just basically freeze there.
Wow, so they could not even shout for
They're
help.
not-
So they were frozen on the ground
Yeah,
on the street.
It's twitching. I think it's back in Chunwan again, and they got shot by water cannon, and they just basically lied there, not moving, because they are having a serious spasm. And
How's their breathing?
the breathing is alright, very rapid, but they are freezing, having serious spasm, and we have me and another doctor helped them massage for almost an hour, till they can move a bit, but still they are still having twitching.
Which muscle groups?
Because they got shot from head to toe again. So it's
from my
every muscle.
experience, from my experience, it's more the superficial and the bigger muscle groups. So things like your quads, your hamstrings, your calves, your biceps. My back was really twitching, but my front was okay because I got hit from the back. So things like my lats could not relax, my traps couldn't relax. The lower back, the erectors couldn't relax, but it didn't go too deep, so my breathing was fine, the intercostal muscles were fine, but it's the side. I think I had one side more than the other. I think it was my right side got hit more, so then that side, the obliques started kicking in, the hip flexors definitely started kicking in, the glutes were pretty much dead. The worst one was
Dead, you mean spasm?
Oh
or-
yeah, it was so painful.
Okay, let's be clear. Was there any migration of the symptoms, or did it only happen where you got topically hit?
Because I was hit all over, I can't really answer that question. I can't pinpoint whether it's because I got sprayed in that area, because I was hit from the back, and my front was fine, so I don't think it I don't think it.
I think from my observation of my two patients, they basically get like immersed from more superficial into more deeper
Yeah.
muscles, because like the irritants will get into the dermatome from your superficial skin. So the muscles, like the deeper muscles, usually kick in maybe probably half an hour later than the superficial muscles, and especially when it comes to the deeper muscle, it's very hard for them to wash away the irritants. So it basically, you will have a spasm for like a day, or maybe even can be up to a week, because you can only move away the irritants by like
By your circulation,
yeah,
by
natural
your
circulation.
own immune system.
But you can't wash it away physically. So it's the toughest
So you
part.
can't wash it away.
Yeah, you can't.
So immediately the best thing to do is wash it away, but because like there might be some delay, I don't know, you might not been able to get access to water.
Yeah,
you,
my patient definitely got delayed because they just.
Yeah, so
freeze
if
there.
so the longer exposure time you have to skin, the more likely it is to submerge into the deeper muscles of your body.
Yeah.
And also, it's not just muscles; it's organs, it's tissue, it's various like vessels.
Yeah.
It affects more than just muscle.
Any vomiting?
For me, not particularly. I've dry heaved a couple of times, but not like nothing came out. Basically.
Coughing?
No, for my patient as well.
No coughing?
Yeah, no,
they did cough a
definitely
lot.
coughing.
So coughing and
Coughing,
muscle spasms.
concentration. It's basically irritants go into, I think they go into the airway, so they cough a lot.
Does it affect your vision?
When I was in that much pain, yes. You start seeing double sometimes. Start like semi-blacking out. Like I nearly lost consciousness like a couple times, but I was at home like taking a nap anyway, so I'm not sure if I was just tired or if I actually lost consciousness.
Okay, so your vision was fine?
I think so. I'm not sure if it's due to the pain that I was seeing double.
Oh, you're seeing double. Okay, and how long did that last?
Just when the pain was really intense.
And how long did that last?
2 days.
2 days? You were
48
seeing
hours.
double?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not like the full 48 hours. Maybe like, I don't know, like 1 minute of that, like 1 hour that I was really in pain, or like, you know, when the pain got really,
The pain
really
tends
bad.
to come and go, in a sense.
Yes, kind of. Like when you're tired, you can feel it more or less. It depends on how tired you are, where you're tired, whether you're standing up or sitting down. I don't really remember because I don't really want to remember.
What about hearing? Any attenuation or change in hearing?
Oh, one
tinnitus
of
or
our
anything?
friends got hit, so he got basically same thing, but he got hit in the ear,
Oh.
and that was burning for 3 days because it's hard to get inside your ear and clean it properly.
Does it affect his hearing?
Not sure.
No.
Anybody hit in the mouth?
I saw one guy at PolyU that appeared to have gotten some in his mouth, and when they were carrying him back, his tongue was quite swollen. His mouth was open, his tongue was hanging out, and
Literally, his tongue was hanging out.
Yeah, his mouth was open, his tongue was just. I mean, because of his
What
position.
about his breathing?
I don't know. I didn't treat him. I just saw him go by. But he definitely got it actually in his mouth.
We're getting hit with 50 Cent Army here.
Oh, really?
Oh, cool.
Let
yeah.
me take a look.
But the Waishan guy, he's fine.
Okay.
So we're getting close to probably getting kicked out of this conference room. Do we
Yeah.
want to do the questions?
Actually,
and the
yeah,
comments?
let's answer some questions. Eric, do you have questions that you've seen that we should answer here?
Any recent ones? Because I just switched off my phone. I thought you were just going on your side of the stream.
There was a few questions that we need to answer, and I don't remember what they were. There's somebody asked about what surgical. I don't know how to get that back either. There's somebody asked about what kind of medical, like surgical supplies do you have? That was about an hour ago, though, so I don't remember that.
We don't have it on site with us
No.
because it's dangerous for us to carry it. It's dangerous if we lose it and it gets into the wrong hands.
And also, it's kind of useless for us to bring it on site because when it comes to surgical,
Everything has to be sterile, and
Yep.
when you're sweating, when every sort of bodily fluid is present on the field, like none of it is sterile. none of it is even like remotely clean, but we make do with what we have. Like even in safe houses, the most like surgical thing we have is sutures. Yeah, sutures.
Tweezers, sutures.
Like some will have IVs, but even very, very questionable.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We leave the surgical stuff for the doctors and the clinics, the underground clinics to do.
Let's see. We lost the comments somehow. Now we can't see them again.
It's my
Eric's
bad.
looking at comments on his
Sorry.
phone too. I'm very interested in that severe symptoms from the water cannon shots, and what do we know about the chemicals that are in there? We keep
Has there
talking
been
about the
analysis
poison
to
tear
that?
gas, but
I don't think anyone knows what's
Any
in it.
analysis on the water cannon
Well,
chemicals?
they,
It's PAVA.
yeah, they're claiming it to be more or less same as the pepper spray.
They've actually said previously, like, we're not mixing any. I might be misquoting here, but they have like said in a police press conference. I think I remember them saying it, that there was nothing mixed in the water. It was just water.
Yeah, and
But
the
Ice.
blue water as like eatable acrylic, like editable acrylic, something like that.
yeah,
It's
but
possible that what I remember is them saying that the blue dye that they
blue
use
dye.
is non-toxic and safe to eat, but that doesn't exclude the fact that it's in addition to the blue dye, they add an irritant into it, which is why you have sometimes two water streams, one with the blue and one that's clear.
and the problem is they so persistently lie. We don't know what's in there.
yeah.
For all we know, it's
I mean, they could be
VX nerve agent. You know, I
On the
mean, they
record,
lie
I was
constantly.
hit with the clear stuff. I've been splashed by the blue stuff. Like it's kind of been on my ankles and stuff, or I've been washing patients and it's like washed onto
Yeah.
myself. And that definitely contains an irritant, like from the.
No, I've been hit with blue that had no irritants.
It's
It doesn't.
Yeah,
it
I-
does
I-
not
I-
correlate.
was-
so
as well.
it doesn't.
You can see some of
so
my
it doesn't
helmet.
matter what color it is. It just depends if
Yeah.
if you're
Makes-
hitting the
yeah.
jackpot or not.
Yeah,
I
it makes me
remember when
wonder too if there's some like how much are they mixing in there? Is
Yeah.
it somebody saying, "Oh, let's put extra jugs"? And,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
'cause
we've
the
seen how
first
they
time
operate here.
I assumed that blue water was peppery and clear water was not. And it was clear water cannon shooting, and I wasn't being as careful as I should have been because I assumed, oh, that's all right, it's just normal water.
then
I
it
mean,
wasn't.
jackpot.
Yeah, exactly.
Jackpot.
Yeah, jackpot.
It's a surprise. Oh, it's not water. Oh, damn.
Yeah, it's rather spicy.
Yeah, and
Oh,
it
they
makes
have
me
a
wonder though
massive
because
headache
I
as well.
haven't seen those severe reactions from the water cannon shots of people being paralyzed on the ground. I've seen a lot of people shot and hurting, but it makes me wonder then if they're doing different concentrations on different days.
Yeah.
Probably. You get a massive headache as well. That's like one thing that I've forgotten to mention. It's like it's so bad.
How long did your headache last?
2 days.
2 days.
Yeah.
Were you able to sleep?
Yes, because I was so tired. Only because I was so tired. I was taking like pain medications with it, just trying to sleep it off.
Were the spasms bad enough that your muscles became sore?
Yes, very much so. It was like it's like hitting the gym so hard that your entire like your entire body just like collapses.
Creeping, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Any other symptoms that come to mind?
Oh,
Joint aches.
that's.
Do you
'cause
remember?
I think you mentioned arthritis.
Yeah, like that's what you said, right?
Yeah.
So P was there
Because
when.
I think basically because when the irritants like they submerge into not only like the deeper muscles, they get deeper and deeper into the bones and joints as well, and then it causes inflammation. So you got you feel like you're like an 80-year-old old guy who can't move around, have a pain knee. And my patient that I mentioned before, they did complain about that afterwards to me.
Yeah, so it was like really inflamed joints, like my thumb joints, like especially.
Both of your thumbs?
Yes, both of my thumbs. The tarsals in my feet, around the ankles, my knees were so bad for like a week. I could not walk upstairs. Like I had to pull myself up with my arms because my thumbs were hurting. That made it really difficult, and because you're nauseous, you kind of have to like make an effort. Where else? Elbows were really not great. One of my shoulders, I think my right shoulder.
Yeah.
Hips. hips weren't so bad.
I
It
think
was
basically it's every joint.
my vertebrae was fine. But I think, yeah, I don't know. My spine was fine. But like the small joints, on the hands, like especially, it was so bad. Like the thumb joints, the wrist joints, the carpals were so bad.
Good grief! It's just like general getting mulched.
Now,
Yeah.
we were talking earlier about how there's been no long-term exposure studies for tear gas and all the other things that we've used. But as casual observers and as people who have been exposed to 6 months of it yourselves, have you seen any lasting effects?
I have this cough that I can't get rid of.
Yeah, you've been coughing the entire time.
Sorry.
I was noticing that. It's made me want. Do you need water?
I'm okay. I have.
Or
no
does water even help?
No, not really.
Here's a question. Now that we're getting into winter, well, Hong Kong winter, do you have any advice for people who might be exposed to who might be the victims of the next water cannon attack?
Well, bring another set of clothes because you'll get hypothermia if you got hit by water cannon.
So try and prevent that in the first place. Like bring maybe like a rain jacket, or like bring an extra set of clothes. There are commercially available like heat pads, like instant heat pads. You can just rip over the packet and they'll heat up themselves.
You carry an emergency blanket, it takes
I
up
think
no extra room.
Actually, the best thing when you like what I usually do when I saw the water cannon vehicle, I usually hide behind any like barrel or obstacles, because if you got hit by the water cannon, it's not just only the irritants. You can got pushed and hit your head and got a concussion, because it's actually quite powerful. I would say the water cannon.
Has anybody breathed it into their lungs that you know of? I wonder if that's what happened.
What I
I
have
wonder if you got it in your lungs, and I wonder
You
if that's
definitely get like a very irritated, just
You can
airway.
you can have a pneumonia out of that.
What I've
'cause there's
noticed
a lot
is that
of
when
mist
I'm
when
with
it
journalists is that when they're following a water cannon truck as it's progressing down a street, sometimes there's a fine mist that lingers in the air after
Yeah.
the water cannon has fired.
Yeah.
definitely.
The journalists who don't have a mask, who are running into it, will usually have to slow down because they're coughing so much.
The spicy
So that's
air.
a persistent thing I've seen several times.
So the mechanism is that there's an irritant, your immune system kicks in, and there's inflammation. And when there's inflammation in the lungs, that can cause like massive, like amounts of problem medically speaking. You can get pneumonia from it.
And if you directly breathe in the liquid, you definitely can have a pneumonia.
Yeah.
Like, because it's a load of irritants and a load of the inflammation, and then basically your lung is done, I would have to say. So
It's very hard to clear liquid out of lungs.
yeah,
Mhm.
So, how many chemicals are we getting hit with here? Let's add it up. Water cannon, pepper balls, pepper spray,
tear gas.
American tear gas, Chinese tear gas. Anything else? Flamethrowers yet?
There's because even for the tear gas, there's a type that they shoot up from the guns, and another type they
The
Throw
hand
out
toss
in,
ones.
like, a
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, the grenades. Those are the ones that put out the most gas, actually.
And it's kind of hard too sometimes with protesters setting fires in the streets. I was there the other night for the styrofoam fires. There were very few people out, but like they set
Thick black
styrofoam.
choking smoke.
Yeah, my lungs still
Wait,
hurt.
what caused that smoke?
Styrofoam, and then
styrofoam.
inside the styrofoam
Oh.
containers were aerosol containers. So
Wait,
not only,
what was that? Was
Spray
from
paints, basically.
Yeah,
Oh,
protesters.
Yeah.
So they were setting them and running, but I was not running.
Right.
I was getting all the from like first aid. You also get the smoke of what's coming. Like my lungs still burn from the styrofoam. And
practically
the
needed a
aerosol.
hazmat suit just to cover these
Really?
protests or be a medic here or be
And-
anybody here.
Quick,
In
Michael,
armor.
we have to go to Mach 4.
Yeah, exactly.
In armor.
So
like,
many
you
people
need it.
have the really cheap small half masks.
Right.
The single ones.
The single filter half masks. And then, the next best thing is the full face 3M, but really you need a proper mask.
You've really got a persistent cough. When did that? You've coughed like 30 times since we started. When did your cough actually start?
About
long time.
3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And when were you hit with the water cannon?
Don't really remember. Maybe 2 months ago.
Is it okay? So it may not be directly.
1.5 months ago. I don't think it's. I don't know if it's like I don't think it's directly short term related. I can't say if it's directly long term related.
Yeah, there's very little long research studies, especially medical and long term effects of tear gas, because tear gas is supposed to be used in short term things. So most studies are done short term. So
Like,
there's no real idea what's happening.
Even if we try to get information from protesters, sometimes they're really reluctant to share information because they don't trust that we're not going to use that information for something bad.
And also, if you try to do any research in Hong Kong,
we lost the comments.
you have to go through a board to check whether it's humane to do the research, and it's definitely not humane to carry out a research on tear gas because you need people to inhale those tear gas.
Well, the government's
Yeah,
doing
so
it
the
right
ethics.
now.
So the ethics committee won't
ethics
actually
Really?
like approve of an actual like government approved or like ethics board approved research. And
So-
also like if we try to do it ourselves, like we've put out as like I think it's like the protester press conference. I don't.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
The
Yeah,
citizens
so-
press conference.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think they
So
call it.
so those people have tried to put out polls, but even those like results are really inaccurate. You don't know who's.
Yeah, and there's certainly a lot of
saying
bias
water.
going to be used.
There is a way to do it. I did it before.
No.
We
Well,
lost the
this-
comments. We were trying to answer some questions, but we
Did it get
accidentally
disabled, or-
swiped. There you go. How'd you do that?
Just
Type
type
the
the comment.
comment.
Yeah.
You did what? Oh, tap the
I typed
comment.
I typed
okay.
a comment.
Now we can answer some questions.
Okay.
Sorry about that, guys.
Let's see. There's some questions about the mental health status of the protesters. Now that we've done this for 6 months, and it doesn't look like it's going to end soon. Do you guys know of any? Maybe they're not like protesters or fellow First Aid volunteers. What's their mental state? Are they getting the right help or counseling that they need?
I mean, we did have a lot of like mental help. There are a lot of social workers or psychiatrists willing to help, but it's definitely not enough because I think the whole city is actually in a very frustrated mood or even like devastation because especially when it comes to people who got arrested or got abused by police before, a lot of them have PTSD, and I've also seen a lot of the protesters having panic attack who could even barely breathe.
So I'm trained in emotional first aid, and since the 12th of June, it's kind of been like up and down, up and down. You have some scenes where it's very emotionally charged. So, like outside Poly, people were very, very emotionally charged. When the protester who fell from Shangkwano died, that was very emotionally charged. Like we went to a lunch rally.
Can you explain how that happened?
I don't know.
That was the tear gassing, right?
We don't know.
You mean in the parking lot, right?
Yeah, it's said that so the student who died that day is actually living in that housing estate. So he basically, what police saying is that he's trying to get away from the scene and go through the parking lot, and he tripped and fell down himself. But from what the other journalists or some of the citizens found, according to the CCTV, there is a guy chasing after him, and then afterwards he fell down in a very unnatural way. And also, according to the doctors who inspect the incident,
So the coroner's report.
yeah, the coroner's report, it's an unnatural posture for him to fall down because
So normally when you fall, you do some sort of thing to protect yourself. You curl up.
you usually
use-
support with your hands.
Yeah, or you curl up and you try to break the fall with your arms and your legs. But he had like a very severe hip fracture, which suggests that
And also a very severe hit in the head.
a head injury. So they had to do like open brain surgery, like something like 2 or 3 times, and he eventually died of a cardiac arrest.
And this was a fall of only 3 meters or something?
Yeah,
It was
3
not
meters.
a
It's from the
huge
3rd
fall.
floor to the 2nd floor, so
Yeah,
it's not a
not
3-story
huge
fall.
And
Four
it's a car
meters.
park.
Eric and I went there and saw it. Eric's
Yeah,
standing
I've been
beside me
there
here.
as
The wall where
There's no way he just fell down there.
like that wall is high enough that you have to climb on top of it before you can get down again.
So the afternoon that he died, we went to a lunch rally. There were like people of all ages, just very emotional. They were crying, panic attacks. Like even in the beginning, like there was July the 1st outside Lechco, there was a girl who couldn't breathe, had to calm her down for like half an hour until she could breathe. Like she was like on the cusp of losing consciousness. And then you have some like dotted around August, when people were committing suicide a lot in the late June, early July type moments. People were really emotional, lots of panic attacks. And then just like general mental health right now hasn't been so good. Like there's definitely not enough supply. There's not enough supply to meet the demands. Like there are channels run by Telegram groups that are anonymous. You can find social workers, you can find like psychiatrists if you need to, but because so many people are having issues, there aren't enough social workers or counselors or like mental health therapists that are available to do that. And also I think because everyone knows that everyone else is going through it, they quite often like are kind of reluctant to call for help. And the other thing is that they don't know who they can trust, so they don't want to be saying things like, oh, I was protesting in Chimsachoy on this day and I saw this happen, which kind of, if you text someone or call someone about it and they like record audio or whatever, they have evidence that you've actually said that, so they're reluctant to get help like in the first place, like for various reasons.
Ewan asked, is there any fears of the police infiltrating the safe houses?
Yes.
Absolutely.
We're like always on edge. Like we try and just keep it to the people that we know. Like people that we've seen through the past 6 months. Like it's the same people, right? It's the same group of first aiders. There are some newcomers because basically the 12th of June happened and everyone went and signed up for a first aid class with Red Cross or St. John's. So there have been some newcomers, but the people who come out every weekend or like basically every night, we know them. We know their face. We don't know their name. So we can recognize them like that.
Well, we've gone over our limit. We had this conference room until 10, and it's 10:26, and they're asking us to leave. And so these were really important. The things that you said about the water cannons and so many things. I hope that people will spread this around to get this out, especially to anybody that can help. And I will come online later to answer some questions. Does anybody have any final words?
Is there any closing remarks? Well, hey, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming. That was extremely important. Eric, anything?
Final note, since we have that question about the mental health of the protesters and the people involved with the entire movement, maybe I can try and find somebody who's willing to sit down with you and have a chat about that in the future.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Maddie?
Don't have anything other than just pay attention to what's happening, I guess.
All right, that's it. Mike out.